that our society is way more prone to isolating people or finding labels for people, and those labels could be based in reality, but at the same time, that label becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where
Yeah.
you act according to what to the boundaries that you think the label puts on you, and then the more you do that, the more you develop the skills that people with the labels generally have, and lose the skills that people with the label generally are worse at.
Yeah.
Because if you know that you're not that you're below average at something, then you're less inclined to try to do that thing, and so you're not going to improve, and so you're going to atrophy. That was what I was looking for.
Mm. Yeah. I wonder. Yeah. In some ways, I feel like, well, it's interesting. It's interesting how now, I guess this is that guy, that one philosopher that Paul talks about, with the authenticity thing and like then the pro felicity. We do now live in a world where it's like everybody kind of participates in a kayfabe sort of thing to a certain extent, in that we have these online personas that are, if not very different from our what we would consider our real selves. We definitely um, cater the image that we put forward to a certain end. So
Yeah, there are definitely, at the very least, exaggerations and like putting forth specific aspects of ourselves and not others. Like you get to choose online what it is that you put out there, and what it is that you present to the world, and what it is that you're concealing from the world.
yeah,
And that's a lot of that is that's a lot of what we do in wrestling. Is first of all knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and then working in a way that amplifies your strengths and hides your weaknesses, and also with the character, like, okay, what's the character I'm trying to portray? What is its alignment? Face, heel, good guy, bad guy, and also what kind of properties does it have? And from those, usually for the best wrestlers, they're based on stuff that we actually have, and so we accentuate those.
yeah. Yeah, that was a so I was thinking about, so as I like I've been watching these documentaries and stuff and learning about different ones. So I remember like Bret Hart was interesting because um like he grew up in wrestling like so much that it's like that's all the personality he has. So which is like not bad. Like he got, I guess in some ways it really did help him to be like a good baby face kind of character, because he was just being this straight shooter guy, and like everything was about like integrity with him. Uh, I guess he kind of got to do the heel, the Canadian versus U.S. heel
Right.
turn, but he like you could never, it probably would have been a hard time to like make him be the real villain or whatever.
So, to the extent that he was, and he was, I don't quite remember the timeline, but I think that U.S. versus Canada character coincided with his feud with Steve Austin, where
Yeah,
the characteristics of Brett that he accentuated were his whininess, which is something that his critics, um,
yeah,
to the extent that he has critics of his personality, that's the main aspect, whininess and bitterness,
yeah,
um, and he just accentuated those. Like, it's not fair. Like, he was a bit petulant
yeah.
about it.
Well, it does seem like it's not a great. It is interesting because yeah, definitely I can see those characteristics, and it's like it's not a great business to be in if you're a really if you have a lot of integrity or whatever. Like it's hard for integrity to win against like uh, egocentrism or whatever. Like Yeah,
I think nowadays it's less so, but at the time,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So so that was so it's interesting. I was thinking, but obviously things change a little bit because then because it's not necessarily always the case. Because then somebody I hadn't known too much about, but I watched the documentary about Bray Wyatt, and he obviously grew up in the wrestling business, but he went past the like, well, all I know is wrestling stuff to I can make this like literally whatever I want. Like he seems to have really captured like the potential of what was, possible through the sport.
Yeah, and actually, just this week, so at the end of the documentary, I don't know if you noticed, it was very evident to people who are actually fans, who are, like now that follow the ongoing stories and know who and have seen Bray firsthand.
Yeah.
Um, but they heavily hinted at this is not the end. There's something about Bray's story that's going to continue, specifically with his brother.
Okay.
Um, and just this past Monday, his brother came back with a group of people that represent aspects of Bray's psyche from previous incarnations of Bray's character as sort of an homage to Bray, um, in a very, very interesting way that's very different than what we've seen before. So there's a lot of that groundbreaking attitude that he had in honor of his memory is going to continue on with his brother and the characters around him.
Hmm. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I mean, and then the other one that I think I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that make a comparison maybe between him and like Mick Foley because I think Mick Foley definitely had that. He definitely seemed to figure out the personality aspect of like what he
Right.
could do with with a character or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and watching his like that like the A&E biography or whatever, but I'm like that's like incredible. That his whole story is like one of the most incredible things I think I've
Mick
seen.
or
Like
Bray? What are you talking
Mick
about?
Mick
Okay.
Mick, yeah.